I don't know what you guys have been doing for the last while because I haven't been coming. I kind of moved into doing some of my own work, and I've kind of like honed in on working with couples who have some sort of sexual addiction causing dysfunction in their relationship and with individuals. And I started finding like a huge pornography problem, which I don't think was really a surprise. What has been surprising to me is how many women are actually struggling with pornography addiction. And I have multiple women now that I'm working with. And so I started kind of diving into, the brain science of pornography and what it's doing in the brain and why it is so hard to stop. And I appreciate this opportunity because I actually put this slideshow together, not just for this, but to be able to share it with clients in a simple form that will maybe give them some motivation to change, to reduce the issues that they're experiencing. So with this, I'm primarily going to focus on repeated or problematic use, the kind that starts to feel compulsive and affects real life. Today, I want to talk through what we know about brain science, about pornography use, and how it can affect intimacy, relationships, and day-to-day life. I'll be focusing on patterns of use that feel compulsive or out of control, where people are trying to cut back but can't, and where it starts to interfere with their mental health and relationships. My goal isn't to shame anyone, but to give a clear, compassionate look at what's happening in the brain and what that means for a real world connection. See if I can figure out how to go to the next slide. Okay. Why this topic matters. Porn is highly accessible and often first encountered in early adolescence. A meaningful minority of people develop problematic pornography use. We call that PPU, which is linked with mental health and relational difficulties. Porn today is incredibly accessible. For many people, first exposure isn't at 25 or 30. It's more like middle age or younger with a smartphone and Wi-Fi. Most people who see porn will not develop a compulsive pattern, but a significant minority do develop what we call problematic pornography use. Use that feels out of control and comes with real consequences. Research links this kind of use to mental health symptoms, relationship conflict, and sexual difficulties, which is why it's important for us to understand what's going on under the hood. I want to be clear. I'm not saying that any single exposure to pornography automatically means someone has a problem. When we talk about a problematic pornography use or PPU, we're talking about a pattern, repeated use that includes loss of control, continued use despite negative consequences, and significant distress or interference with life. Many researchers think of this as similar to a behavioral addiction. It exists on a spectrum. Some people use occasionally without much impact, others struggle with daily, compulsive patterns that affect their mental health and relationships. Here's a quick crash course in the brain. The ventral striatum is part of the reward system. It lights up when something feels good or important. The prefrontal cortex helps with self-control and long-term decision making. The amygdala is involved with emotion and threat. Porn combines intense novelty, visual stimulation, and sexual context. So far, so for many brains, it acts like a super stimulus. It can trigger big dopamine surges in the reward circuits. And because the brain is plastic, because it changes based on what we repeatedly do, those reward pathways can literally rewire around this pattern of seeking and consuming sexual images. These changes matter because they show up in how people actually feel. First, sensitization. Over time, the brain becomes hyperreactive to porn cues. A notification, a memory, or a moment of stress can trigger strong craving, even if the person doesn't enjoy in the way they used to. Second, desensitization. The reward system gets less responsive to everyday pleasures, so normal life feels flat. Relationships, hobbies, work feel boring compared to the intense stimulation of porn. Third, weakened pre weakened prefrontal control. It becomes harder to hit the brakes in the moment, even when someone truly wants to live differently. And finally, conditioning. Arousal gets wired more to pixels, constant novelty, or specific genres, which can make real life intimacy feel less compelling or harder to access. Did that change?
Hmm.
Okay. Brain imaging studies have compared frequent porn users and people with problematic use to control groups. What they find is that on average, heavy users show structural and functional differences in key reward areas like the striatum and in the connections between these areas and the prefrontal control regions. In people with problematic use, fMRI studies show stronger brain responses to erotic cues, so the wanting system is very activated. Even when the actual pleasure isn't higher, newer studies also show patterns of both overactive and underactive regions that mirror what we see with other addictions. None of this means someone is permanently damaged, but it does tell us that the brain is adapting to repeated high intensity stimulation. When we look at mental health, problematic pornography use is constantly associated with higher levels of depression and anxiety, more overall psychological distress, and lower sense of well-being. Many people who struggle with this also report feeling lonely, disconnected, and emotionally up and down. On a practical level, it can look like staying up late on screens, being tired the next day, procrastinating on responsibilities, feeling foggy or checked out, and then feeling ashamed and frustrated with yourself, which ironically can become a trigger to go back to the same behavior. So it becomes a loop: use, relief, regret, and more use. Something that I have found interesting in my studies is I have a female that I've been working with, and I'd been working with her for a very long time, and she was experiencing brain fog, overwhelm, difficulty focusing, irregular sleep patterns, and I couldn't figure it out. Like we were exploring all areas of her life, but here over on the side, she wasn't telling me about her porn use. She, there was a lot of shame and guilt about that. And so it was just not talked about. It took her about 5 months to share that with me. And it kind of came up sideways when we were talking about a dating relationship. And then now, like I brought some light to that and started sharing with her, like a lot of the issues she's experiencing is actually because she's doing this high dopamine producing activity, which and this is how I explain it to clients, is realize when you get too much dopamine, the receptors that are actually supposed to pick that dopamine up and deliver it to the parts of the brain that make you feel good become overwhelmed. And when they get overwhelmed, they just stop picking up the dopamine. And then we experience severe depression, the brain fog, the overwhelm, the lack of motivation, lack of self-discipline. And those were all the things she was experiencing. And it's not that there isn't enough dopamine, it's that the dopamine isn't being delivered where it needs to go. And then the brain is triggering you to just want more and more dopamine. So it's actually pushing you to do more of the dopamine seeking behavior. So you get stuck in this loop. It's a
Bryce,
real,
do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry if you want me to wait, I can wait for my
Oh,
question.
go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Okay. So, did you define problematic porn use yet? Did I miss it?
Yeah, problematic porn use is really considered anything that's like compulsive. You're not able to stop, like you're seeking it regularly, even when you don't want to be seeking it anymore. If
So,
it's
would that look
causing,
like a person watching porn at work?
oh, absolutely.
or like in the
or missing
like
appointments.
yeah, I'm looking at like did you quantify it like or anything like that?
Quantify it. I would say if somebody's looking at it at work, that's definitely problematic.
It's going to have
Okay.
an effect on parts of their life. Missing
Yeah, okay.
appointments, not doing work, being caught doing something that they shouldn't do, for instance, at work. Yeah, that kind of
And
stuff.
my other question is this is this correlate well, do they have to is this if they watch only or if they watch and masturbate?
It can be both. When you
Okay.
add masturbation into it, there's a whole nother set of dysfunctional issues that can come into play.
Uh-huh.
Um, More desensitization, difficulty with ejaculation. Sorry, I'm like trying to dance around these words.
Don't dance
Difficulty
around it, normalize it. It's cool.
maintaining an erection. I say it openly with clients. For here, here it's a little different. Um,
It's okay. I ask an adult question.
yeah. So masturbation, they often go hand in hand, but that will add a whole nother set of dysfunctional problems in their
Yeah.
sexual and intimacy relationships. So
Are you going to talk about that aspect too?
I'm not today.
Okay.
We could do that another day if you
All
want.
right.
Cool.
I work with a lot of clients that are in this category. So I'm this is very, very cool for me.
Oh, good. Well, it's all reversible. That's the best part. All right. Pornography doesn't just respond to arousal, it teaches it. Over time, repeated exposure trains the brain in what to respond to, what kind of bodies, acts, and scenarios feel exciting, and what to expect from sex. Because online porn offers endless novelty and intense stimulation, people can develop tolerance and escalate to more extreme or niche content just to get the same level of arousal. That learning process can carry over into real life, shaping expectations about bodies, performance, and consent. Clinically, we also see some young men with normal physical health who struggle with arousal or orgasm with a real partner unless the situation mirrors what they're used to seeing on the screen.
Could could I ask another question?
Yeah.
You mentioned it affects consent. What did you mean?
There's a disconnect that happens emotionally for a person when they start using more and more porn. They become often less aware of their partner's emotional needs or cues about what is appropriate and what they're comfortable with. And it's often described by their partner as very selfish. They become very selfish and really forceful in what they're trying to get out of the experience because they're struggling to reach the arousal that they need now.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I think it also probably has to do with the fact that uh, I don't I don't think there's a porn video in existence that displays proper consent.
No.
Like it's you're just assuming that it's already happened or something like that.
Right. Well, and the brain doesn't know the difference between reality and visualization. So when they're watching those porn all the time, now they're with a real partner that maybe hasn't been exposed to all of that, and they might be disconnected from the fact that their partner hasn't experienced all these things that they have.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
In couples research, higher or more secretive porn use is frequently associated with lower relationship satisfaction and lower sexual satisfaction for both partners. Partners may feel compared, rejected, or like they're not enough. Porn can become a private world that competes with the relationship for time, energy, and sexual responsiveness. Over time, that secrecy and distance erode trust and emotional closeness, and we see more conflict and even psychological aggression. For some couples, especially when there are affairs or infidelity involved, chronic porn use can be a factor in separation or breakup. I've seen it be devastating. To be balanced, it's important to say that not every study finds the same effects, and not every person or couple experiences porn in the same way. The impact depends on the motive. Are people using it to cope, to avoid, to connect, to explore? It depends on the meaning, whether it's shameful and secret or openly discussed. And of course, it depends on the level of use, occasional versus compulsive. Some couples report neural or even positive effects when use is rare, mutual, and transparent. My focus in this talk is on the end of the spectrum we tend to see in clinical work, where porn becomes a primary coping strategy, a source of shame or conflict, and something people feel stuck in. On a daily level, problematic use often looks like avoidance more than anything else. Instead of being present and feeling our feelings, we check out with screens, numbing rather than processing. Instead of pursuing goals or having hard conversations, we escape discomfort. Stress, shame, anxiety, and boredom get managed with a quick hit of stimulation. Real life intimacy feels messy and vulnerable, while porn feels safe, controllable, and available on demand. Over time, the long term cost is a smaller life, less confidence, fewer social and romantic risks, and more isolation, even if someone is technically connected online all the time. The encouraging part is that the same neuroplasticity that wired these patterns in can help wire new patterns out. We start with psychoeducation, understanding the brain science and normalizing the struggle, which often reduces shame. On the behavior side, we track triggers and high risk times, set up blocks or barriers, and intentionally replace porn use with higher sources of reward and regulation. In therapy, we look at what porn has been doing for the person, soothing anxiety, numbing trauma, filling loneliness, managing shame. For many, couple work is crucial to rebuilding trust, communication, and safe connected sexuality. Psychotherapy is considered the first line intervention for problematic use. And while the research is still developing, we see a lot of hope when people have support. So, to wrap up, pornography is a powerful brain level stimulus that can reshape the reward system for some users, especially with early, frequent, and long term exposure. A subset of people develop problematic use that's tied to miserable brain changes, mental health symptoms, and compulsive patterns, as well as lower intimacy, trust, and relationship satisfaction. It can pull people away from real life vulnerability and connection. But none of this is hopeless. With support, intentional behavior change, and often therapy, people can move toward freedom from compulsive use and rebuild a more connected, embodied, and values aligned sex life and daily life. Any questions?
I found that fascinating. I wonder if I know there are 12-step programs related to uh, what is called sexual addiction. Um, and I imagine this overlaps with the idea of sexual addiction in general versus porn addiction. Can you talk to how those two interact or intertwine?
Well, I think there's a lot of overlap in all addiction. I mean, with I've worked a lot in substance use too. Substance use has the chemical dependency component, but the addiction starts with typically the same things, right? Like trying to not feel our emotions, trying to avoid difficult conversations, not being able
Dopamine
to
rushes.
process. Yeah. Well, dopamine to make you feel good, right? It's about the
Yeah.
chemicals in the
So when I
brain.
do whatever it is I'm doing, I get a dopamine rush and that wires me up more, makes me want to do it more.
Yeah, and people get there's a loop people are getting stuck in with every addiction. So helping them see the loop so that they can change it and figure out where they can get off the loop. So I have found a lot of success most recently with the psychoeducation, but then also I kind of recognize it as like there's still a chemical process going on in your brain, and we actually want to reduce the dopamine creation so that those receptors will start picking up the dopamine at a more even killed pace again, so that you'll start feeling better because most of these people are depressed
Hmm.
when they're using like this. And so we just start cutting back. We start setting, you know, goals for how often they're going to use this week. And we do a slow reduction, just like a titrate with a medication. And that seems to be really successful for people. It's less scary as
Hmm.
they're starting to like process their emotions again and be in real time with people and having real conversations. All of that's very scary for them.
Have you done any of this in conjunction with any 12-step programs?
Mm-mm.
Um, SA, I think, is out there, SAA. But I'm imagining there are other 12-step programs as well to give people support around this idea of uh, the downside potentially of a 12-step program related to sex is similar to the downside of 12-step programs related to food addiction is we're wired and need a certain amount of food, and I would argue we're normal people are wired for sex. The and sobriety isn't necessarily the answer. Um, so I don't know if you have a reflection on that.
Well, absolutely, but not but I I'll work with the partner of the person who's struggling with this a lot to help them understand, like the dysfunction that they're experiencing really isn't about them. It's about the person that's exposing themselves to these unrealistic experiences. And as they reduce their use and come back to normal, like their attraction to their partner is going to increase again. Their ability to be present in the moment with them is going to improve. All of those things come back really quickly.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Dave, do you have a question?
I do, but I think Price had his hand up first, so
Oh, okay.
I can go after.
Well, thank you, David. Um, I just wanted to share, just I have experience with working with the sex offender population as well as adults with disabilities who engage in problematic porn use. But what I've seen more than one sex offender that was convicted of child pornography
Hmm.
describe kind of what you described as uh, needing more and more niche content, which turns out to be riskier content to feel that same form of pleasure. And it doesn't seem like it's an isolated, incident. I've heard this about three times now from different people that said something similar to, well, I started watching more and more porn, and these are guys that are in relationships or not in relationships. And then I was watching it at work, and then I was watching it on my phone in the movie theater, and then I was in on chat forums, and then all of a sudden I was downloading and exchanging this illegal content. And I'm wondering if you read any research to that effect, where the fact this kind of slippery slope kind of argument for it.
Well, interestingly enough that you asked that, I'm actually a KSOM certified treatment provider.
Oh, me too. Right on.
I work with sex offenders every day, and what I'm what I have learned and what I have experienced with my clients is um, first a desire for porn, and then it's kind of like they're not getting the arousal for what they normally are looking at, and they go off into, you know, I've heard of incest porn and,
Hmm.
you
That is
know,
so common.
all these
It's
different
disturbing.
types of porn. I don't even know all of the types. I've never actually explored it myself, but they often are not even interested, or they don't think they have any interest in this type of porn, but they wander in it just to see. And then they do have some arousal from it, and they're surprised by it, even though cognitively they're like, that's something I shouldn't like.
Hmm.
And that's what creates the trail, and they end up into the illegal content.
Hmm.
And I work with guys, they have kids at home.
Yep.
They know,
Time.
like, I would not
There's
be
a
able to
cognitive
do,
disconnection happening.
yeah, there's a disconnect. And it's really, I don't think it's actually, in a sense, sexual for them. But there's an arousal piece, I think, more around, I can't believe this is stimulating me when I'm
Uniqueness,
not really
difference, change, yeah.
attracted to it. It's, they know they're
Hmm.
doing something wrong, getting
Our
away with it.
brains crave difference and change and newness.
It
Tell
makes
that
a
to all
lot of
my
sense.
clients that are afraid of change.
Yeah. Tell me about it. Also makes sense for the level of denial that I'm sure you see as well in the terms of shame cycle.
Hmm.
Dave?
That's cool. I didn't know
Oh,
that you worked in that realm.
I didn't know that about you either. We'll have to connect offline.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've been in it for about 3 years now.
Okay, cool.
so I'm going to call on Dave.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. C. Janine, excellent to see you. We miss you, of course. So I just wanted to give you a shout out there. I have a two-parter for you. So please, parse it out. Again, I value your experience and your thoughts. So I have a client going through this. I think this is again not you don't have to give like a answer. I just love to hear your thoughts and experience. So first part, if a client was sexually molested by a family member and then grows up to have uh you know these porn addictions, like again, love to hear your thoughts and experience about that. I don't know, you want to go one by one or you want me to just put everything on the table?
Whatever you want to do.
Sure. I'll throw it out and then you can always ask. And then the second part is now going forward in his present day relationship with his wife. uh he's had a couple affairs, and so obviously there's that bridge of trust that you brought up in relationships. And so second part would be, what are your thoughts around, for example, a wife wanting him to because you mentioned the gradual process of this work in helping reduce the porn addiction. What are your thoughts around the spouse saying, no, you need to stop, cold turkey, and its effects on him, the client?
I think cold turkey is very effective. I've watched people do it that way. Um, it really is. It depends on what you're seeing with the client, like what I would start with. Like I have a young man right now that I'm working with who has multiple addictions going on. And so we're doing a titrate process in multiple areas of addiction where, you know, a man with a supportive spouse that's going to, support him through the withdrawal. Like I see like doing a clean cut as probably more effective, and she probably needs that to start building some trust and alliance with him again.
So
But I also,
sobriety would mean not doing the porn, not necessarily not doing sex.
correct. And I see a man acting out like that or a partner acting out like that in a relationship, I try to explain it as this is a symptom of underlying issues. There are issues in that relationship, in their communication, in their connection that probably contribute to that addiction being what it is. And so we start working on the underlying issues right away. Does that make sense? Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it's just, thoughts and experience. I love it. Thank you,
Is
Janine.
there
Yeah.
a connection between molestation in your youth and porn addiction?
I don't know. I do know that there is a connection between molestation in your youth and acting out on children. And
Yeah.
it's about control and manipulation uh and a warped sense of safety actually in the
Mhm.
mind when acting out on a child.
So I know there's also a connection with early molestation with promiscuity. So a seeking of a lot of sexual uh, encounters. The It would make sense, although I haven't seen any data on it, that that may also extend to porn addiction.
Possibly.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd have to look at that.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Any other questions for Janine?
I really appreciate this presentation, and I'm sure that I would like to see a part two eventually. It's a cool topic, and there's not enough conversation about it.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
appreciate it. I'd be interested, yeah, I mean, really kind of to go into the weeds on it, especially with the ubiquity of OnlyFans and these different platforms. I think what are the last data I said 1 in 10. I can't remember if it was women or people in general. I think it's women. 1 in 10 women under the age of 25 have their own OnlyFans page
I,
now, right?
Mm.
I thought
So
it
like
was even a higher number.
it might be. That was the last I saw, and that was what, a year or two ago. So I mean, it's a troubling, fascinating, and much needed to be talked about topic, you know?
What has been surprising for me is how many clients or people in general are not connecting their porn use and their self-stimulation use with the dysfunction in their lives. So I have someone come in saying, I've got brain fog. I can't have an orgasm. Um, I don't feel connected to anyone. I feel lonely. And and my immediate question is, how much porn are you using? And it always catches them off guard. They did not think that's where the conversation was going to go. But I now ask about porn and masturbation right along with asking, like, how much are you drinking? How much are you using marijuana? What medications are you on? I also ask, how much caffeine are you intaking? Because I could do a whole didactic on caffeine. Like, it is really messing with people's cognitive functioning and creating a lot of problems. And people are just completely unaware of it. And so just bringing that awareness so people can start making better and healthier choices for themselves.
How much that do you think is part of, this I don't this really kind of strange society, I guess we live in this day and age where things like pornography and things that are deeply problematic, addicting, and cause serious issues are normalized and celebrated. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that's why there's a disconnect is because it is so normalized and so accepted and so easily accessible and our children are being exposed to these things at very young ages. I mean, I was at a fast food restaurant just the other week and I watched a mom giving her 2-year-old a Coke. I'm like, oh, that kid's not sleeping tonight.
Mm.
And I, the general public just aren't aware.
Well, it's problematic enough that I mean, it was only a couple of weeks ago. I remember one of our a United States Congress member was literally on a public airplane perusing pornography on his cell phone, literally in front of everyone, including people sitting next to him.
Mhm.
And he's like, "Oh, it's not a big deal." Like it's wild. This is sorry. This is
No, it's true.
this is a wild topic.
No, it's true. Yeah, we could do a part two.
I'd love it. Anessa, you have a question?
I do, and maybe this will be included in the part two. Who knows? Do you find intricacies in culture and religion that play a role in?
Absolutely.
Okay, I thought so.
Absolutely. People that have grown up in highly in highly restricted religious cultures have higher levels of shame and guilt and higher levels of secrecy around it, and it makes it a little bit harder to treat.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, do you find that the rate is, I mean, higher? I don't know if you can quantify that in any way.
I don't know if it's necessarily higher.
Okay.
I feel like it's just everywhere right now.
Would
Yeah.
that be would that be a protective factor? Like
Could be.
somebody's yeah.
You know,
Um,
there are at least two factors involved with the cultural religious aspect. One would be mitigating porn use because there's already strictures against it and structures in place that uh, would decrease or de-emphasize use. But the flip side is the whatever we are told we can't do, we want to do, and that there's maybe a propensity to when I get freedom from my parents to experiment even more. So I don't know if anybody's teased out is there generally a positive effect, or is there or a modifying effect, or is there an increase effect?
So I don't know if this answers your question, Dr. C, but some of the things that I hear within like the religious scope, well, mostly men speak out about this, but they will say something along the lines, like Christians and other denominations and other religions tend to be either celibate before marriage, and when they do get into a relationship, and they do have sex, they quite are quite surprised that their porn addiction does not go away when they get married. And right then you start having partner relations or issues there, and the female partner, I mean, stereotypically, is just so confused, right? So distraught. She's completely just right, just unaware. And the male partner is usually also as confused as the female partner as to why this is happening, not connecting that it's not the sexual need, but rather the connection. So that's what I generally hear. I don't know if that ever comes up in the room in that kind of context and situation.
I don't know that I've had that exact thing come up in the room. What I have experienced a couple of times, um, I've had women start coming to therapy, newly married or in a new relationship, and the intimacy was really, really great the first month or 6 weeks, and then it becomes like it's not possible anymore. Like he can't maintain an erection. Then all touch and intimacy becomes difficult, and it kind of drives a wedge in between them. And I'll invite her. I'm like, hey, I want you to bring your partner. Let's talk. Let's learn how to communicate better about this. And typically before the end of that first session, I find out that he has a very strong pornography and masturbation addiction that he's had. And the excitement was there in the beginning of the relationship, but just like porn, he now needs something more exciting. And she's no longer this exciting thing anymore. And so the cure is for him to stop his pornography addiction so he can normalize again. I am hoping that's along the same lines of what you're asking about.
Yes, I think so. I think that matches to what I was saying. Yes.
Okay.
It would make sense to me that in cultures where celibacy is expected and encouraged, that therefore either they haven't had any sexual experience, or they have had only internet experience with sex, which has its own problems in terms of what is normal sex, what is a normal partner, what's a normal body, um, what's what's normal in quotes. If all a person has gotten, or most of what they've gotten, is inculcation of internet porn, they're going to have a very skewed outlook on what normal sex looks like, and maybe a different response.
And to expand on that, Chris, what I'm
Uh-huh.
seeing with women is very high levels of addiction to erotica. And they're reading these books, right? They're creating their own imagery in their mind. And these books talk in detail about the connection and, the consideration and all these things in addition to these sexual encounters. And now women have these very high distorted beliefs of what intimacy should be like in their relationships. I could
Uh-huh.
do a whole nother didactic on that too. So it's kind of a mess.
These things become memes in our culture too. I just want to like add
Oh,
that
for
in.
sure.
Okay, I'm gonna shut off the recorder.